This video covers Franky's parents and their connections to MADS. It's possible MADS were likely a pirate crew or at the very least a fleet, and we're going to be exposing some of their secrets in this video. So make sure to like and subscribe for free tickets to Karmaland. Anyway, let's go. Franky came from the technically advanced South Blue via reverse mounting at 4 years old, roughly 30 years ago. Exactly 30 years ago before the present day in One Piece is the year 1492, which in real life is when America was discovered by Columbus. There are plenty of connections to America through Franky, such as what we see with the hamburgers and fashion sense, etc. But we'll focus on that another time. So if you think there is a deeper reason for Franky's connection to America, let me hear your thoughts down in the comment section. I'll make sure to include them in the next video. But anyway, on with Franky's history. Franky was the 7th member to join the crew, which ironically happened at Water 7, the island of shipwrights. He was found on the scrap island by Tom when he was a 10-year-old kid, assuming he'd been abandoned by his pirate parents. Tom saw him using a cannon that he'd fashioned from scraps lying around. This is something most kids would not be able to do. Also, the cannon was not a typical cannon either. As you can see, it has a very strange design or appearance. It looks like the design was influenced by the fact it was made from scraps. From observing Franky's mechanical and technical prowess and adding the fact he was thrown overboard near Water 7, builds a case that Franky spent his childhood around technology, potentially an advanced pirate ship with his parents. We see evidence of this in the cannon he made, and we also saw his love for weapons technology, again recently when Franky saw Vegapunk's beast mechs. He appears to have these advanced skills before becoming an apprentice for Tom, who then trained him to be a shipwright. It's worth noting that Tom's abilities lay strictly in boat building, and he was not particularly known for any particular radical science. Obviously he's been involved in some stuff, but that wasn't his forte. It was Franky who has been shown to have more of a focus on weaponry. Overall, you could say he fused his own knowledge with what Tom taught him, resulting in the battle Frankies. As we can see by the designs, we did not see Tom teach him any of this weaponry or technology. If you look a little closer, you can also see each battle Franky is numbered, another trait he has independent of what Tom taught him, a theme we see with many MADS members' scientific creations such as Vegapunk's satellites. Some of the more obvious examples are Judge and the Germa and Caesar's experiments. You got the pacifistas as well. A few cases some may have missed, however, are Water 7 with the numbers stated pretty plainly on the outside of each dock, and we know the city was built over a previously destroyed one. In some shots we also see a 5 and a 6, which is the Gomu, and also in one of the panels there's Doom written above that. This might also tie into Wano, seeing as Wano is made up of 7 islands. The giant numbers are also in Wano, failed experiments whose name also act as their number. Kinda weird how Franky's home is similar to the Shogun's palace too, right? But anyway, back to the point. By looking at these numbers, we can see a connection to MADS. We can even look at other characters, for example Dr. Hobback, since he was a genius scientist and he numbered his creations. Additionally, there's a connection between Franky and MADS through Queen. We see Franky and Queen do similar poses on this volume cover, and the name of some of their moves do match. They also have the same blood type, and we've not really seen them interact in the story yet, so maybe Oda is saving that for some MADS reveals later. Other recent characters we can look at are Stussy and Dufeld. In the chapter 1069 cover story, we see how the MADS fleet was potentially being funded by the underworld, in this particular case with Lufeld as the benefactor. Only a chapter prior in 1068 we saw Stussy apparently reminiscing about the past and being familiar with Vegapunk's technology, particularly his traps, while also respecting Vegapunk's genius and skill, implying they have an established relationship already. By the way, remember this panel? In the attempt of taking the Tama tobacco, she kills Lufeld and says, "My dumb dead friend." This familiarity suggests she was once friends with him in the underworld as well, or at least knew him. So you can see it's possible Stussy too is connected to MADS, and knew Dufeld because he was directly funding the group. Franky also has ties to this underworld. That's where Franky got the Adam Wood to build the Sunny. Anyway, MADS member Vegapunk probably has the strongest connections to Franky out of all of them. For example, the star symbol on Franky's arm. Franky is often wearing a shirt with one, and it could be found on his technology too. This could be a nod to Vegapunk, as we've recently seen stars on his work, like with the holographic dragon and the seraphim. We saw that Vegapunk uses the same star in some of his creations, right? Which is kind of like his trademark. Why do I say that? Well, the word Vega is the name of a real-life star, the biggest in the constellation of Lyra. This constellation has one main star with several satellites, similar to Vegapunk. Also, the suffix punk ties to punk themes we see across MADS, like their designs and dress. Why is this significant to Franky though? Well, because those stars appeared on Franky's arm after he used the scraps found on the ship to rebuild his body, suggesting it was Vegapunk's scraps he used. This might all be tied to Franky's inherited will, hence why Franky was sent to Karakuri during the time skip. Also, peep this, Oda is really inspired by Akira Toriyama's work, Dragon Ball, and actually owes his success with Shonen Jump to him. After all, it was Akira who told Shonen Jump to take on Oda after already refusing his work. I recently started a rewatch and I couldn't help but notice some similarities. Both Franky and Bulma have the blue hair, both of them have a very advanced knowledge towards building machinery and technology, both of their creations have numbers on, both of them have this relationship with an old genius inventor, Franky with Dr. Vegapunk and Bulma with her dad, Dr. Breath, both of whom are doctors by the way. Both of these old dudes made legendary inventions. Vegapunk with Lineage Factor, Dr. Breath with his capsules. Early on in the series, Bulma was wearing a jacket with a star on too, so you can see what I'm saying by now for sure. Back to the theory though, through the One Piece story you can see many connections between Franky and Mads. Before all this, we saw in the story that Franky attempts to stop the sea train from transporting Tom to Enies lobby, something you would assume is impossible for a normal human. But something interesting does happen. He actually managed to stop the train for a moment. A pretty insane feat, especially without dying. Nonetheless, he still got absolutely smashed by it immediately after, but this is where the magic happens. Franky, on one of his last breaths, sees a ship appearing next to him. It's a very strange, technologically advanced ship. We can even see dials similar to what we've seen in Nell's cover story in the moon. Also, look how Franky mentions his body. He talks about it being hot, like he's overheating, and he also compares his body to wasted machinery. He states, "Useless body of mine," which is further evidence Franky was already part machine. And furthermore, this chapter is called Reactivate, or in some versions, Resurrection. Why would such a strange and technological ship be so conveniently near Franky when he was about to die? Well, maybe because this was one of the ships of the MADS fleet. A ship that could have even carried the MADS crew at one point. Sounds crazy, but check this out. Look at the aesthetics of the ship. It looks very advanced, almost Vegapunk-like, and it looks similar to the ship that we see in the cover page of 1069, titled "All Things Are Brought into This World with Hope," possibly suggesting that Franky was born or made on this ship from a specific hope or aspiration. Maybe that's also why, when he gets on the boat, this reunion is what makes him say that it's a really calming place for him. If that was the ship where he grew up, it would make sense why Oda would include this sentiment. A ship like this would require profound technological skill and knowledge. As I mentioned earlier, being chased by the world government for illegal experiments is very pirate-like behaviour, and a ship is the perfect way to constantly keep evading the world government, and stay on the move at the same time. Right, let's quickly look at other members of the MADS fleet and it will soon become clear this seems to be common already. So you got Queen's ship, you got Caesar's ship, which is a super interesting design, and you've got German's 66 ship, which escaped the witch hunt. Also, look at what MADS was researching around the same time. We found out the research team were lawless, a pirate trait for sure, and were working on research and development of high-tech weaponry. Strange considering that's Franky's speciality, even as a kid. And look at what they discovered while they were on that ship. The blueprints to life itself. A living organism's lineage factor. The same thing that Judge used on Sanji and his brothers to make them modified humans. Franky might have been their first time experimenting on a human with the lineage factor. Franky may have originally even been born or made on that ship. So bearing in mind Franky has no medical knowledge, I think the reason Franky managed to do what he did on this particular ship was because he was already a modified human, maybe even modified by similar technology to what we see on the boat. So when Iceberg says Franky's crazy to the core, he could actually be pretty on point with that. We also see Den foreshadowing this when he asks Franky if one of his ancestors was also a robot. Also, the cover to chapter 548 shows different scientific creations and inventions, and Franky is on there too. He's the only person on there, which, you know, it's a big hint from Oda. To tie all this together, let's look at the timeline. Franky was found in 1498 when he was 10 years old, after which he lived in Water 7's scrapyard. I think it's possible Franky was abandoned at Water 7 by his parents deliberately, probably to protect him from being discovered by someone such as the world government. This is because he was a cyborg already at this point, making him sought after technology, and it also ties in around the same time MADS disbanded. We see Water 7 has numbers similar to the MADS members and is itself a very technical scientific creation, so there's likely connections between MADS and Water 7 also. Water 7's design as seen from the map looks pretty identical to the Soldier Docks system that Franky designed for the Sunny, so Franky and Water 7 are also connected. This would explain why he was abandoned there. It also seems pretty strange that he just so happens to be found by Tom, someone who curiously has a symbol on his shoulder, matching symbols in the story we've seen so far relating to the 8 kingdoms. Also, later on in the story, Franky is saved by what I think is a MADS ship, guided by either a Klabauterman or a Viva Ricard powered sort of technology that guides itself to Franky whenever he's close to dying. Klabautermans have ties to ships, and ships have ties to Water 7, so the fact this happens around there, I think is a strong possibility. The history does seem to align well. Additionally, an interesting connection is that Vegapunk went to O'Hara 22 years ago, which we discovered recently in a flashback, which by the way occurred right as CP0 arrived at Egghead to suppress knowledge. Franky's backstory just so happens to also be set 22 years ago, and again triggered by CP9 going there to suppress knowledge. This is a really nice parallel between the two arcs and kind of ties in Franky and Robin's backstories also. We also see this again on this page in chapter 490, where only they told something about their origins back to back as well, so there's likely more to their relationship, particularly when you include Tom's fear of a girl from O'Hara and his brother Den being a sea forest researcher with clover tattoo and logo on his body, possibly being tied to O'Hara. We are seeing a lot of backstories from characters coming from the South Blue recently, and I believe we'll have some big lore drops coming soon. Stussy, Kuzan, Sol, Franky, Kid, Bonnie, Kuma, Lindbergh, all of them lot for example. Anyway, thank you for watching, don't forget to like and sub and leave a comment, show some love.